From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. I'm Nick Barris. It is Wednesday. Boy, we're making it through the week on these short weeks, aren't we? Just like that. We've got a great show middle of the week for you this morning. We're going to open up the phone lines for you. If you have a situation, a question, if you're wondering how things worked out with a doctor, maybe you didn't like the result, or if you've had surgery at a hospital, I think you know what I'm going to. It's our regular guest coming on with us this morning to talk about malpractice cases and whether or not you've been done wrong. With us this morning, Clint Kelly.
Good morning, Nick.
Attorney extraordinaire, specializes in malpractice law. There are other attorneys out there that are general practitioners that can take a malpractice case perhaps, but there are folks like you, and there aren't a lot of them, that
very
specialize.
That's correct.
That's what you do. You don't do divorces.
I do not.
You do not do criminal law.
I do very little. I may take a pro bono case now.
Once in a while to help
that's right.
someone out, but malpractice, talk about how there are just a handful of them and what separates you from someone that doesn't. What extra training do you get in that?
We're called a medical malpractice specialist, or we're board certified in this. The training is we have to take an oral examination, a written examination. We have to have a certain number of jury trials that we have completed the verdict. And then we have to have a board approve us for membership in this organization. And last I checked in Tennessee, there are about 20 of us across the state who have become board certified.
It's just, to me, that's amazing. It's just 20 in the state. And I guess part of it, too, is the malpractice field of law. I don't know. It's difficult sometimes to sue, is it not? These hospitals and doctors with the changes in tort law, the cases that come to you, and I know you keep busy, but I mean, and we're going to get into that with you if you're just joining us and don't know Clint. I mean, there's some real interesting dynamic. I've learned so much from you, but is that part of it? Why are there lawyers that are choosing not to go into malpractice law because they know it's just a tough field?
Yeah, and it's expensive. Both of those two things.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but you're right. It has gotten tougher over the last 5 years to bring these cases. You also have to have access to experts. You have to have the ability to bring in various medical specialties to assist you as experts, and those experts can be expensive and difficult to find. And so for those of us that concentrate on this line of work, we do have access to those experts.
You have a Rolodex of different folks that you know, correct? That you can draw on different cases that are respected in their field that you would call to testify.
I do, and from time to time, Nick, I'll have to go actually online and talk to medical schools and other areas to find specialists, because sometimes
some bizarre case.
Or I may need to find a different specialist for a different kind of case. You can't use the same expert over and over again. You know, so you have to diversify. And there are times where I'll call a colleague who does malpractice work, maybe in Alabama or Georgia, and say, who do you know down there who'd be willing to testify?
That's what's always interesting about that, is because you talk about, be it lawyers, athletes, reporters, you know, doctors. Is it hard to find a doctor willing to testify against another doctor?
It certainly is in Tennessee. It's almost maybe a 1% rule in Tennessee. Now, going out of state, you can find one. It's not easy because most doctors don't want to testify against another doctor, but they can be found. But that's what part of my specialty is being able to find those types of physicians who are willing to testify in a case that they believe in.
Of course, they get paid.
Yes, they do.
And that's why you say it's expensive. But my take on this, whatever field you're in, I understand you're not out there gunning to try to bring down other doctors for no reason. But if I were a doctor, or heck, if I'm a reporter and I, for some reason, asked about someone else who did, in my opinion, what was a blatant wrong, I'm not going to have a problem talking about it. I'm sorry you're another reporter, but you make us all look bad. That's the way I'd be if I was a doctor. I'd look at it and say, all right, you know, if I'm convinced by what you've shown me that this doctor clearly malpracticed that led to a horrible result for this patient, and he's still out there and can do it again to someone else, I mean, you wouldn't have to beg me to testify.
Some of my best friends are doctors who are more than willing to talk to me about cases, in addition to us talking about, you know, personal lives and things that have nothing to do with our profession. The reason I point that out is, and I've told you this before, I believe about 10% of the doctors are committing 90% of the malpractice. So the types of doctors that you're talking about who would be willing to take on a case are those that believe that they want to try to shut down or at least try to bring justice for those who are hurt by that bad 10%.
Yeah, we really believe in that cause. All right, listen, we're going to open up the phone line, 737-7587. It's been a little slower this week because we're coming off Memorial Day and all that, but you're welcome to jump in. What I want to do is just to let you know, so as you sit there right now wondering, all right, should I call Clint? First of all, chance to talk to him and get some legal advice right now, free of charge. But all right, let's just explain to folks again. I always like to do this. How do they know that they should maybe give you a call? What constitutes the possibility of a malpractice case for someone out there?
All right, two things. It's a bad medical mistake that causes bad injuries, catastrophic injuries, loss of a limb, loss of an organ. A death, of course, would be a catastrophic paralysis. And usually the patient or someone in the patient's family has a gut instinct that the care was bad. Something went wrong. Sometimes a healthcare provider will actually come to the patient or patient's family and say, you know, you need to have a lawyer look at this. Something's gone wrong. I mean, it's kind of like a consciousness of guilt. They realize something's happened and they believe the patient's family ought to get help. And we always talk about this, Nick, on every show. It's part of the education, and I'm going to reaffirm this. You have 1 year from the date that you discover you've been injured to give pre-suit notice, or else your claim is barred. I've had people call from this show recently. I think I turned down maybe 3 or 4 cases of people who called from this show where the statute of limitations barred their claim. Meaning
they would have had claims. Meaning like you're looking at this going, boy, this is one that'll go. And then you're like, oh, no, it's outside a year.
Yeah, I always send written letters. If I reject a case, I send a written letter saying, look, here are the criteria for the cases. I don't always take cases. In fact, I take very few cases for the reasons that we talk about. And then I'll also put in the letter if there's a statute of limitations problem. And I've been seeing that lately, and you know how much it pains us because we realize that people may have a legitimate claim and they just simply, either because the doctor let them think that they were going to get better when they didn't, or maybe, you know, they thought, well, we can get through this, we'll just let it go. And then after a year or a year and a half, they decide we can't let it go because it's too devastating, and then you have to tell them, I'm sorry, you waited too late.
God, that's
so you just can't do that.
All right, so that, I guess, the point he's making right now. If you're watching right now and something comes to mind, either you, someone you know, where you're not sure, that's the point you always make. If you're just not sure, but you get, like, I thought you said it well. If it's a family member, it's just a gut feeling, and that something went wrong that wasn't proper. Nothing hurts to call, okay? Just make that phone call just to check it out, and you can get an evaluation or something like that.
It's free. The client pays nothing. I don't know a malpractice lawyer who requires a client to pay legal fees. It's always the same. The client only pays if there is a recovery. If there's no recovery, the client doesn't pay any fees. So I mean, it's you know, you should always try to get an opinion if it's free, because it costs nothing and it could make the difference between recovering from an injury financially and being devastated the rest of your life.
Yeah, and again, so that's contingency. That's why you're picky about the cases you take. Because you've actually had cases you've said that maybe were actionable and that there was a wrong, but the damages weren't such that you could justify doing it because it was going to cost too much.
Right.
And whatever you might win wouldn't cover that cost, which didn't mean that person didn't have something bad happen.
That's another reason why, you know, I get called from people who see the show, and there are cases that I would like to take, I can't take because the way the system is right now, the way the rules, the laws are put together, they really favor only major cases being brought to court. The medium or smaller size cases, you just can't afford to bring them because our legal standards are so high right now. They tilt in favor of protecting doctors and hospitals, that those cases, unfortunately, I can't take, and most other lawyers can't either.
Yeah, in cases like that, what do you do? Well, you may not have means for recovery, but I guess you can report that to the medical board.
Correct.
Something like that, get the word out.
That doesn't help the patient financially
no,
get
it
through
doesn't.
the loss.
Understandable. All right, listen, we're going to take a break on that note. The number is 737-7587. If you want to jump in, give us a call. The lines are open right now. We'll have them. Plus, you brought something that I think a lot of us are going to take note of. You want to hear this when we come back about a procedure that again, all of us are going to have at some point. And there's problems. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us.